Version of my journal. I'm Stephanie Rivers. Come on in, kings and queens, and welcome to the conversation. I'm multicasting on several platforms. So, on whatever platform you're watching me, we want to welcome you, whether that's Facebook Live or YouTube or LinkedIn or Twitter. Come on in to the conversation. If you're one of my subscribers, I want to thank you for taking out the time to do that. And if you're new to the conversation, we know that you're going to hear something that you're going to like and want to share. And then you will subscribe so that the next time that I post new videos, you will be the first to know. Today, we are talking about eminent domain and what that means to Black people who own property and what that could mean for your family right after this. Hi, I'm Stephanie Rivers, and I want justice. The police officers involved showed reckless disregard. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Stephanie Rivers, and you're watching my video version of my journal. A lot of us during the summer months, we go on vacation, family vacations, and a lot of people, when they go on vacation, they go to places that are near a beach. They flock to beachside resorts. That's why Florida is so popular, and that's why places in California, any coastal area that is near the beach or has a waterway next to it is very popular. And vacationing near the beach, that's why a lot of people do it, because they like the water. Or even if you want to live next to a body of water, whether it's a lake or a river, that property next to that waterway is more valuable. But there was a time when property next to waterways was not necessarily considered as being more valuable. So today we're going to talk about eminent domain and how it's used to take control of land and property owned by private citizens and families across the United States. And one of those families was Charles and Willa Bruce. If you live in or you know people in the California, Los Angeles area, you probably have heard this story before, but we're going to talk about it in detail today. The Bruce family, Charles and Willa Bruce, they settled in California around 1910 in search of the American dream for their family. So a quick review of history, you know that when with the abolishment of slavery, freedmen, what they were called free slaves, freedmen, they were promised 40 acres and a mule to jumpstart their independence. And when that transfer of property didn't happen, one of the many promises broken by politicians, some of those freed slaves started to move away from the Southeast region where most slave owners kept the slaves. And those freedmen, they started to move west, and it's called the Great Migration. So a lot of Black people had skills, and they started to move west and into the Midwest and to just build their own Black towns. The African American Museum of history that's in Washington, D.C., in that area that opened up maybe like 6 years ago. Great place. And there are other museums as well, but that's a great place that chronicles the evolution of Black townships. And so Black people left the South, moving west, and they stopped in incorporated areas and pooled with other Black families so they could use their skills to provide for each other, and the Great Migration. And the Bruce family was one of those families, and I'm going to show you their picture. This is a website that explains more about the Bruce family, but essentially, this is a picture of the Bruce family. They are James and Willa Bruce. I want to make sure that I have the names right. The Bruce family, and they moved. They took it all the way to California, and so what a lot of people realize now and then 100 years ago is that racist white people are everywhere. You can't escape them. Okay, so during that time when the Bruce family moved to California between 1912 and 1920, the Bruce family settled in Manhattan Beach, California. They purchased 2 parcels of land. Each of those parcels of land was next to each other, and they were, you know, as they found out when they moved to California, that the white people in that area didn't want Black families in their neighborhood, so they pushed the Black people out to the outskirts of town. And that meant that in coastal areas like a Los Angeles area, that the outskirts of town meant on the edge of the city, which was next to the water. And so that gave the Bruce family the opportunity to purchase land. So they purchased 2 parcels of land, and those parcels of land were considered to be not that valuable, because they didn't want the Black families to be, even if the racist white people didn't want the Black families in their area, so they pushed them out the outskirts of town. So as most Black folk are, the Bruce family was very resourceful. They said, you know what, we're going to purchase this land, we're going to build us a beachside resort, and we're going to invite other Black people to come and enjoy themselves. And that's what they did. And they named it Bruce's Beach. It was like it was a resort with a dance hall, with a cafe, and a bathhouse. They had just a lot of different entities that they put together and made it a nice place for other Black families to come and enjoy themselves. So these are pictures of people who came to Bruce's Beach to enjoy themselves. That is Charles and Willa Bruce on their wedding day. And my light is trying to. And then these are other Black families, visitors to Bruce's Beach in 1920. This is a picture of the Bruce family. Miss Willa Bruce on the left, and her daughter-in-law and her sister at Manhattan Beach in the 1920s. So just everybody, enjoying themselves on the beach. But as it came to be, when the white people saw that the Bruce family and some other families they done set up shop, they are making it work. We thought they were gonna, fail, but they making it work, and they're building estates, and they're having a great time and making money and being self-sufficient and independent. Of course, some people didn't like that. And so the Bruce family, they actually bought those 2 parcels of land for just $1,200. $1,200 100 years ago. And soon other Black families, they came and started to purchase the land. And so when the white people saw that they were making money and being prosperous, they started to try to intimidate them out of their land by vandalizing it, by the Ku Klux Klan even tried to burn it down, but to no avail. The Bruce family kept on keeping on, and they succeeded. But what's fair and what's right is not, it doesn't keep racist white people from scheming. Okay, so then when they realized they couldn't get the Bruce family out of the property by hook and crook, then they said, okay, we're gonna scheme with local politicians to get them off the land. So what they did was a group of white real estate agents teamed up with politicians to get the land from the Bruce family by using the eminent domain law. So a lot of you might be asking, what is eminent domain? And if you haven't already, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so that when I post new videos, you will be the first to know. So eminent domain. Eminent domain is whereby the federal government, or it can be the local or the state government, they can usurp, they can take control of private land, private property, if they deem that that land and property would be better used for the public's benefit. And so that's what happened to the property that was owned by the Bruce family. So the property, even though it was a viable tax base, the family was making money, paying taxes, they had bought the land fair and square. Somehow the local politicians in Manhattan Beach claim, oh, this land is just not fit to inhabit. And so they took the land from the Bruce family because of the eminent domain law. And that, again, is the power of the government to take private property and convert it to public use. And it can be confiscated and taken over by federal, state, or local municipalities. So that's what they did. And for 30 years, so they came in, the government did, they tore down the resort, the Bruce's Beach resort. They tore down the estates, all the black people had built and earned. They tore it down. So that's what happened, because they claim it wasn't meant for it wasn't good for to inhabit. But for 30 years, so until the early 1950s, there was nothing on that property until the government, it went between the Manhattan Beach local officials, they owned it. Then it went to the state. Then it went back to, the local officials, and federal. They kind of like played volleyball with the property until the early 50s. They actually turned it into a park and called it Bruce's Beach Park. Okay, so it was passed around, and at some point, the Los Angeles County Lifeguard Association, they actually built their headquarters on Bruce's Beach, and it's still there today. So can you imagine if the Bruce family had been able to keep their land and continue to own Bruce's Beach Resort, what types of generational wealth that family could be in possession of today? That's the question. So if you want to call in and talk about it, or if you know anything, if this has happened to someone in your family, or your property was taken, because there are lots of stories, whether it was from in California to the Carolinas, where Black people have owned beachfront property, a property that not necessarily was on the beach, but it was just land. They're not making no more land, that they had, it was in the family, and then by hook or crook, racist white people come along and they find a way to take it from those families. So if that has happened to you, feel free. I put the link in the chat so you can call in right now if you like, or if you prefer to just text chat with me, you can do that. So back to the Bruce family story. 100 years has passed since Charles and Willa Bruce initially purchased those two parcels of land, and it was taken from them by the law called eminent domain. And essentially, it doesn't even have to be a federal, it doesn't even have to be a government entity that claims the property or takes the property from private owners. It can be a corporation. If that corporation can prove that the use of your land as a private citizen, as a private family, the use of your land is better used by that company taking it over. And of course, the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution speaks to eminent domain, and it says that if that does happen, if a private property is taken through that process, that the family must be given, what do they call it? Just compensation, fair compensation for the land. But who's to say 100 years in the future what that land could have been worth that they're trying to claim as for public use? And so there are lots of instances where that has happened, and that the property of private families has been taken by the government. Now, they claim that they're going to pay you through eminent domain, they'll pay you just compensation. But to my knowledge, the Bruce family was not giving any compensation for their property. And I did a little bit of research, and I used to live in Washington, D.C., and I used to drive through Rock Creek Park all the time. It's in Northwest D.C., and it might stretch to other parts of DC, but I lived in Northwest. And to get to college where I went to school, I graduated from American University with a master's degree. And where I lived, it was easier for me to cut through Rock Creek Park to get to American University from where I lived over near the old Walter Reed Hospital, if you're familiar with DC. Anyway, so I didn't know it, but Rock Creek Park used to be owned by a lot of different private families, and the federal government said, well, let's create a park. We want a park so the people can enjoy it, the public can enjoy it. And they took the people's land. If you live in Florida, the Everglades National Park, same thing. It was owned by private families, and the government took it over and said that it was better used as a public park. And of course, we're most familiar with how the federal government took over the land from some families in along the Mexico United States border, so they could do what they call better border control, to keep illegal immigrants from crossing the border, took their land. And so it happens all the time. But in the case of the Bruce family, the use of eminent domain was racially motivated to take their land, to take control of Bruce's beach. And it prevented the Bruce family descendants from their rightful use of the land and the profits from the use of the land for nearly 100 years. So last week, we fast forwarding, last week, the Los Angeles Board of Supervisors, led by Chairperson Holly Mitchell. I just want you to see Holly Mitchell. I'm going to put up the picture of Miss Mitchell. led by Holly Mitchell and a few, well, it was a unanimous decision. The Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors decided, led by Miss Holly Mitchell, that they were going to return the ownership of the property to the descendants of the Bruce family. Can I get an amen? This was led by Miss Holly Mitchell and a few other board of supervisors were instrumental in getting this through, pushing this through, because we know one lone Black woman can't do it. Okay, so there were some other people that were involved, but I think it's important to note that the board of supervisors, they just didn't do a proclamation and say, we apologize for taking y'all's land, and that was the end of it. No, they said, we're gonna back up this egregiousness mess that y'all did to this family, and we're gonna turn this deed back over to the Bruce family. So last week, the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors turned the property back over to the descendants of the Bruce family. And because the headquarters for the Los Angeles County lifeguard headquarters is on Bruce's Beach. So y'all know it's got to be big if they got a headquarters building and they do all the work for the Los Angeles County lifeguards. They come there, they train, they do all of that. It's got to be a big property. They said, we're not only going to give you back the land, and we're going to lease the land from the Bruce family for $400,000 a year. Now, that's what reparations looks like. So I try to reach out to members of the Bruce family to get them to come on to talk about it. And I'm going to continue to do that. But I just wanted to make this my conversation for this week, because this speaks to the importance of what land and property and the value of it. The value of the property now today is valued at over $20 million. $20 million. And so this Bruce family, I don't know how many of them is still left, but I know $400,000 is going to be something that they can work with. Okay. And so this is how the Board of Supervisors feels today. But just like there are descendants of the Bruce family that are still living today, there are descendants of some racist white people that are still living today who don't like what the Los Angeles County Supervisors has done. Okay, so they are going to be working. This is not the end. They're going to be working just as diligently to overturn this agreement. So even though $400,000 a year lease is that's awesome. That's like, it gave me goosebumps reading that information, and I am so happy for the Bruce family. But you can't rest on this, because what's going to happen next is, if any of those people get voted out of office who voted for this, rest assured the next person coming along is probably not going to want to do it, and they're going to come up with a reason why, oh, we don't need to pay them $400,000, and they probably are now looking for a new headquarters building for the lifeguards. Okay, that's how they do. So they're gonna come up with the reasons why they don't need to pay the Bruce family for the property. So if I was the Bruce family, I would be coming up with some other multiple streams of income plans for that property, because it's not going to be, a forever deal, and you always need to be looking forward to what you can do to make the property in your family an income, make that property an income producing asset. There are lots of stories of families that are going through this and have gone through this, and some of them will never see that land again. Some of them had the land and didn't do nothing with it when they had it, and then it was gone. And now they see that all the reasons why people keep saying you need to value property and land, because they ain't making no more land. And as soon as they get it in their family, they never let it go. So we need to value the property and value what our forefathers have done for our families individually and for the Black people as a whole, because we have a lot of valuable opportunities that we could be using to create generational wealth if we would just come together and come up with a plan. And that is my message for today. If you or your family owns property, see about that property. Make it an income producing asset. Even if there's a house on it, you need to be renting it to somebody. If there's nothing on it, you can rent that land. It could be a parking lot. It could be something that's done, periodically. You don't necessarily have to build anything on it, or you could build something on it and make it an income producing asset that way. But whatever you do, don't give up your fight for your family's land. To find out more about the things that I care about, you can go to the written version of my journal. That's at eurweb.com. Thanks and have a super day.